Greetings from Castle Goring, from Aurora, Mickey, and from me. Well, hopefully we'll be able to have a little fun today. So, without further ado, I'm going to plunge right in. Sybil Francis has a very entertaining comment. Well, the duplicity, the height of duplicity of Netflix in running an ad for the Crown on Lady Colin Campbell's video tonight. Right here, right now. I now loathe Netflix. I hope they go bankrupt. Oh, Sybil Francis, please, not until after I've issued my lawsuit and they've settled or I've won in a court of law. Please, I want my damages. I want to be compensated for my distress. So please, can they tick over until at least when I've achieved victory? And also, quite frankly, clever business practices. You know, these people are sharper than two pins. And I suppose one could almost regard it as a compliment. I gather that Meghan and Harry have also advertised on my website, or whatever it's called. So, as you can tell, I'm totally untechnological. But anyway, so 3ND4K51 says the names. Lady C, what do you make of the news that Meghan does not conduct the interviews in her Archetypes podcast, but instead has a producer do the interviews? And then she adds her own audio later to make it seem as if she's conducting the interviews. Thank you. Well, Allison Yarrow has let the cat out of the bag, hasn't she? Because Meghan interviewed her ostensibly, or so we were deceived into believing, for the B-word interview. You know, the podcast about bitches and bullies. And she tried to shift the bully part of it to just the bitch part of it. It's clever, Maxie, baby. Well, Sophie Yarrow thanked the person who interviewed her, and it wasn't Maxie Baby. And what's also emerged is that Sophie Trudeau's interview was conducted in a completely different place from Meghan's, which begs the question, was it a joint enterprise, or was it another one of the stitched together arrangements that are then presented as organic? Because remember, Megs is very organic. Everything developed naturally with Harry. I didn't need to Google him. I never Googled him. I didn't know anything about him. Everything that I've discovered about him has happened organically and naturally, and he's told me all. And I think she's very organic. And let's not forget very breathy as well. She's very organic and she's very breathy in that podcast, because yes, I'm Julia Roberts. Julia, yes. Oh, I'm Julia too. I'm so modest and down to earth. I'm just demure. Yes. Unless, of course, then being seductive, then it's another matter altogether. But otherwise, I'm going to be demure. She is a study in artifice, and everything she does is contrived. I mean, I have thought for a very long time now that Meghan doesn't have a natural bone in her body. that everything is a contrivance, everything is artificial, everything is thought out, everything is, what's her favourite word? Or one of her favourite words? Curated. She is a curation of herself. She has curated this creature, but this creature can't even have a conversation. I don't know if you've noticed, but in the podcasts, which are truly dire, and I really hope I don't have to listen to all of them because they are, well, I don't suffer from an insomnia, but if I did, perfect solution. Everything is a contrivance. And it's not surprising that she has the hoi polloi, the rabble, the producers, one of the 26 producers, I gather, who are making these dire programs for her. Because she's far too great and grand. I mean, you know, I'm the Duchess of Sussex. I'm a proud, confident woman of colour. And classy to boot. And I mean, you surely don't expect me to interview all those people. I mean, you know, why would I come down from my high horse and mix with them? I mean, who are they? Who's this Allison Yarrow woman? And Sophie Trudeau? I mean, isn't she that pretentious piffler who calls herself the First Lady of Canada? And I do, and it suits me as well. But otherwise, I just think, well, you poor broken down woman, you're not even royalty. Nobody even has to bow and scrape to you. So, the whole thing is a farce. Yet another aspect of the farcicality to which we are being subjected. And what gets me is that this woman doesn't realise that when you are high profile, you better be careful what you do. And you better not do what you shouldn't. Because 9 times out of 10, it gets out. But then again, of course, she's only been high profile for 4 or 5 years, so she hasn't learned the lesson yet, and maybe she'll never learn it. Fabulous Newt says, I was shocked, oh hi baby, yes, come to mummy. I was shocked to hear that Meg's latest idiotic guest, Jameela Jamil, was part of the remorseless bullying campaign that played a part in the suicide of Caroline Flack, who was one of Harry's ex-girlfriends. Is it just me, or does that seem quite sinister? It is quite sinister. And yes, I have looked into it, and Jameela Jamil did hound that poor girl Caroline Flack, who it was well known in media circles was in danger of committing suicide, and indeed did. And she was subjected to a relentless campaign of sanctimonious abuse from Jameela Jamil. Piers Morgan called her out on it in a major way. Now, I actually happen to like Piers. I know he's a bit of a fulminator, but he usually fulminates about things that are worth fulminating about, even if sometimes you want to punch him in the mouth to just get him to shut up. Not, of course, that anybody would ever do it, because one wouldn't, but sometimes one's sorely tempted to say, oh, Piers, put a sock in it, otherwise I'm going to sock you. Naughty me. But I think that's how a lot of people feel about Piers. But the fact of the matter is that Piers is usually on the right side of the moral divide, even if he fulminates a bit too much sometimes. He's just one of the many people who called her out on it. This is a woman who Meghan Markle has on her podcast pontificating, the two of them pontificating about rubbish and basically being, oh, life is so tough and terrible when you're as grand as we are. We're just so wonderful. And let's not forget that Jameela Jamil has a reputation for, rather like Meghan, having conquered many, many mishaps, many illnesses, I gather. She scaled many a mountain. She scaled many a health issue that I gather that would make Mount Everest seem like a plain. I think, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm overgilding the lily slightly, but she has recovered from leukemia, Hodgkin's disease, cancer of the liver, cancer of the brain, cancer of the spine, cancer of the foot, cancer of the everywhere but cancer of the tongue. She is also evidently a woman who, like Meghan, has known how to use her feminine wiles and sanctimoniously trashes the sisterhood and the everyhood just so that she can flourish. And this is the person with partly who has helped her supposed friend Caroline Flack, maybe a frenemy would have been a better word, to commit suicide, because although she wasn't the only cause, evidently her conduct was a contributory factor. And this is the person that Meghan Markle deems as suitable to have on a podcast. Well, they say water seeks its own level, and I can only say, yes, it does, doesn't it? Oh, gosh. Mickey, what are you doing? No, don't drink from that dirty water bowl. What are you pushing it up to me for? It says Markle and Jamil. Oh, then you really better not drink from it. Honestly, you couldn't make any of this up. Elizabeth Ann says, back in the summer it was announced that Meghan would be receiving an award at the GQ event in London this month. Apparently, GQ changed their minds. Meghan was nowhere to be found on the list of award winners on the GQ website, nor indeed, I will interject, now that the awards have taken place, was she present. Her name wasn't mentioned, nothing. At least someone at GQ came to their senses. I think that this will be happening more frequently. It appears that more and more organizations are distancing themselves from these two has-beens. Well, one is has-been, the other is really never was. Just that we thought for a little while we would let the D-lister pretend to be a B-lister. Then we realized that really she had Z-list talents. What do you think, Lady C? Well, you've made more than one point, so I will take them in reverse order. More and more organizations and eminent people have been distancing themselves from Harry and Meghan because they are what in Hollywood used to be called box office poison. You know, this is yet another instance of Harry and Meghan putting out that they're going to be presenting Oscars, or she's going to be presenting an Oscar. Come the Oscars, she's nowhere to be found. The GQ, they put out that she's going to get an award. She doesn't get an award. I mean, don't these people have any shame? I mean, I'm asking a rhetorical question because the answer is self-evidently no. She has no shame. But I mean, wouldn't you be? I certainly would be embarrassed to be putting out lies like, I'm going to be presenting an Oscar. I'm going to be getting an award for my humanitarianism and my wonderfulness. And oh my goodness, my goddess-like status by GQ magazine. Then nothing happens. And she's not even ashamed. I mean, I tell you, that degree of brass neck, no wonder the king called her tungsten. Marianne Dixon says, maybe the check bounced. You could be right. In the interim between the announcement and the award, they had to come up with the $2 million, didn't they? That they are supposed to have owed Sunshine Sacks. So, oh, poor babies. Maybe the check did bounce, Marianne Dixon. Or maybe this was always just another one of these snippets of misinformation that emanate from Harry and Meghan's camp. The way rarely feces emanates from a dog with diarrhea. BJC says, oh, the shame. It looks like GQ rescinded Meg's award. The trophy room shelf stands empty. Not for long. Kerry Kennedy to the rescue. No Oscar, no GQ award, but ripples of hope. Naughty Bobby Kennedy Jr. for saying that he finds the whole thing perplexing, mystifying, and doesn't approve of it. I mean, how could he be so disloyal as to criticize the award to those wonderful, wonderful champions of humanity? Now, what were their names again? Has been and never was. Stephanie Olson says, could it be that MH is a reincarnated version of Evita Peron? MH. I think you mean Meghan Markle, because you can't mean Meghan and Harry. So I take that as a typographical error, Stephanie Olson. And I'm going to read out what Lial Palazzolo says and then answer them together. I think Matrix Meg thinks she is Evita, the former First Lady of Argentina. I need to be dazzling. Dollars. My people adore me. All of this from the Lloyd Webber musical. Funny enough, I actually went to the first night of that. It was for one of my charities years ago. Elaine Page was fabulous. And it really was wonderfully moving. But Evita Peron was a hustler. She was like Meghan. In some ways, she had an interesting background because she was a hustler and an actress who was eaten up with resentment because she was illegitimate. And her father was from a good family. Her mother was an ordinary woman, and she and the family were really not treated very nicely. And she hustled those buns and used everything she had. But Evita Peron had genuine style. and her clothes fit beautifully. We can't say the same about Meg's baby. Evita Peron was really an obsessive compulsive who believed in the religion of Peronista. She used her adoration of Juan Perón and her deification of him and her deification of the movement of Peronism to promote herself and turn herself into a potent figure in not only Argentinian politics, but world politics. And rather like Meg's baby, she went on a European tour, and she was furious when King George VI wouldn't receive her and wanted to know who the hell did he think he was just because he was the King of England. Shades of Meg's baby, no? Who the hell does that old broken down old woman think she is? I'm a proud confident woman of colour and a star of suits. She doesn't own the word royal. Lots of parallels. Massive chips on the shoulder. Both of them have used their feminine wiles. And both of them have been relentless and abusive. Both of them avowed to be humanitarians, but Evita did far more good than Meghan has ever done. Meghan talks the talk, but doesn't walk the walk. Evita used to talk the talk, then she used to walk the walk. Admittedly, she did it maliciously. If you crossed her, you were toast. There was an incident with a man who he did something really petty, and she not only kept him waiting forever, but she ensured that he and his family were thrown out on the street. So she was, rather like Meghan, not advisable to be crossed. Spiteful, vengeful, malicious she was. And of course, she died very young. I've actually thought of writing a play about Evita. I've done a bit of research into her over the years because she's an interesting character, and the way she ended up is also interesting because she died at 33. But before she died, they gave her a lobotomy to neutralize her political venom. Juan Perón got one of the top brain surgeons from the United States to come to Argentina and lobotomize her, because even as she was dying, she was going to nail the oligarchy, and she had all sorts of plans for her legacy that would outlive her and destroy the country. And Juan Perón simply neutralized the danger. He had her lobotomized. And that was Evita Peron, neutralized permanently, whether she had lived or died. Fascinating, no? Lorraine Mybra says, "Hi, Lady C. What do you think about the gentleman who claims to be Charles and Camilla's son? Surely this is not possible. I'm a skeptic." You're a skeptic? So am I. Ridiculous. This is Anna Anderson all over again. There is no possibility of this man being Charles and Camilla's son. I think it's very sad that he believes that he is Charles and Camilla's son. But you know, people have all sorts of delusions. Meghan believes she's a great person. You don't need to have your belief backed up by fact. If your belief is glamorous and self-enhancing enough to justify you clinging to it, even when it is apparent that your belief has no basis in reality. Ludicrous. Patricia St. Clair says, Lady C, wouldn't it be prudent for King Charles to release the bullying report to thwart Meghan? Patricia St. Clair, very Machiavellian, very wily. It's the sort of thing Meghan would do. It's not the sort of thing the royal family will do, except as a last resort, at which point a key would be left in a drawer, and lo and behold, somebody would enter the building, take snapshots of the report, and leak it. But that's very unlikely to happen, because they don't need to resort to subterfuge. They could get one of the people whose complaints were vindicated by the report. They could release them from their signatures on the Official Secrets Act and NDAs. I don't think it's necessary, though, because there are reasons as well why respectable and respected organizations don't function like that. Because you always get found out. And if you have a principled position to maintain, it's not possible to maintain it with hypocrisy. Having said that, there are times, and have been times in the past, when news leaked that needed to leak. Does it need to leak now? No. Everybody knows Meghan's a bully. I mean, the contents of the report don't matter. Everybody knows she's a bully. Everybody knows that the staff who complained about her, I mean, the story is such, it's received such wide coinage that there's no merit. There's a lot of disadvantages to leaking it, but there are no advantages to leaking it, in my view. Michelle Gehring says, Lady C, this may sound off the wall, but I can't help thinking Tyler Perry is Meghan's future man. How does that strike you? His constant statements on her behalf reek of him having been love-bombed. Bigger house, more money, more Hollywood fame, another rung in her climb. My dear Michelle Gehring, there are one or two problems. Tyler Perry's black. Meghan's never had a black boyfriend, ever. Never had a black man. I mean, in Jamaica they have a saying, once you tried black, you never look back. Meghan doesn't like looking back. She wants to look forward. Forward to the next conquest. Forward to the next adventure. Forward to the next... Close up, Mr. Jamil. Forward to the next award. Oh, I need to thank the organisers of this award for having recognised my heartfelt and compassionate and wonderful work with my bleeding heart for all those poor little those wonderful people on whose behalf I struggle womanfully on a daily basis to make their lives better, because I'm such a feminist and so wonderful. I don't think Tyler Perry at this point, but when Meghan realised that being a woman of colour worked better than being white, even though by her own admission she was horrified when she linked up with Harry and people started to regard her as black. Oh, me? No, not me. No. Look at me, I'm very pale. Not me. Look at me, I have straight hair. And look at my nose, pinched to within an inch of its life. I don't have a black feature. No. Then she realised, it works. And all of a sudden, my dear, the Queen of Sheba is a blonde compared to me. Oh dear, oh dear. So who knows? Maybe if the price is right, Tyler will fit the bill. Well, who knows? We can't predict the future. She might even be lucky. Harry might vacate his position in a very convenient way for her. Fingers crossed, Megsie baby. You could be lucky. Angel D says, or Angel D, whichever it is. Hi, Lady C. Love your plethora of royal news. Did you happen to see the TMZ episode on Meghan Markle and Prince Harry? It's a hoot. Sarcastic. Would love your feedback on that. Tim says, hello, Lady C. TMZ have released a highly skewed documentary about Dastardly and Muttley titled No BS, Harry and Meghan. It reeks of a Sussex propaganda piece with the Poundland Duchess's fingerprints and spurious narrative all over it. I believe we cannot access it here in the UK, but the Royal Grift has posted the full documentary on her YouTube channel for 24 hours only, owing to copyright infringement. The video was uploaded 15 minutes ago. Please could you watch this if you have time, 1 hour 20 minutes, and be so kind as to share your thoughts with us. NB. The first 14 minutes are spent trying to convince us that Harry never wanted to be a part of the royal family since his mother died. Then the BS rarely ramps up, pushing the yacht girl's many false narratives to an American audience. Oh, and of course the panel discuss just how smart Rachel Ragland is, and that perennial fairy tale gets an obligatory mention. Well, I saw it. I did miss the last 10 minutes of it. It fell off, so to speak, and very untechnological. And I don't know if it was pulled by the network or whatever, but I missed the last 10 minutes of it. And I skipped over the first bit. It was just, the whole thing was spurious and ridiculous and propaganda. I find it really interesting that these people knew enough, because if you looked at the program, as I did for much of it, they made some very interesting points, which showed that they were earthed to an extent in reality. But their agenda was, we've got to beat the drama. We're cheerleaders for this movement. And this, they reminded me of Hitler Youth activists doing their calisthenic exercises. All done to rote, all done to a script. And they did come out with one or two things which showed that they knew that some of what they were saying simply could not be so, because they actually effectively contradicted themselves at times. But that was only at times. By and large, the whole thing was a farce. I was particularly annoyed on Thomas Markle's behalf by the lies told about the letter that she wrote. They said that he leaked the contents of the letter and that the letter was soaked in love. I'm quoting, soaked in love. This woman can find grace and charity in the middle of all that shit. Excuse me. She's the one who defecated on her father. She's the one who penned that feces. She's the one who, and they even said, oh, how affectionate the letter was because she'd started, "Dear Daddy," although she is there in black and white stating, as came out in the court case, to Jason North, that she should call him Daddy because if the letter leaks, really, she meant when the letter leaked, that it would pull at heartstrings. And these schlumps, I don't know who any of them were. I had absolutely no idea who they were. I'd never seen them before, and I hope to never see them again. Oh, they were just ridiculous. But she can find grace and charity in the middle of all that shit. It's her shit, to use your vulgarism. And you're trying to say that she has shat on her father with grace and charity, even though she has admitted that the letter was written not to make up with him, but to destroy him and to make sure that she neutralized him in future. I mean, where do they come off with this? Then they go on about the baby shower and make the point that it did not go down well in Britain for good reasons, and they did understand that celebrity and royalty are not quite the same things, and that Meghan was using her royalty to get her celebrity fix. So, as I say, they were pegged in reality, but only some of the time. They went on and on about that she was contemplating suicide. I mean, if you believe that, you will believe anything. Meghan contemplating suicide. I have to tell you, I am familiar with people who have contemplated suicide. I've known them. I've been one myself. Meghan's behaviour that evening is contraindicative of her claims to the contrary. She was absolutely not contemplating suicide. And they made out that the royal family refused her treatment. Excuse me. The royal family, she's an adult. The royal family had nothing to do with whether she sought treatment or not. She went into the palace to ask HR to help her get treatment as if she were an employee when she is an employer. That was to lay a paper trail of victimhood. They must be really dumb, although of course I'm sure they're not, because they indicated just enough to know that no, they're not that dumb. They're simply following the party line, doubtless for their careers. And I'm not knocking them for that. You know, all the members of the Ministry of Propaganda are propagandists. That's how they make their livelihood. I mean, saying that the royals denied her getting mental health help is just so ridiculous. Harry had been having mental health help from before he met Meghan. So had William. Catherine's brother had suffered from depression. The Queen and Princess Margaret both saw psychiatrists at various points of their life. Where do these people get off with these lies? They do make the point that going to British Columbia was to soften the blow because Meghan had every intention of always ending up in Hollywood. So you see, they do know the truth when it suits them to know it. Then they were outraged on Meg's baby and H's behalf about security, because they couldn't understand why the British people didn't want to pay for security for a couple who would not be working for the British nation and the British people. Since when would TMZ be paying any of these dumbos who were on that show to sprout their nonsense if they were not sprouting the right sort of nonsense? No, they wouldn't get paid. They would be booted out and not have any recourse to TMZ. Why should Harry and Meghan be paid by the British public for security? How much in danger are they? Not at all. And even if they are, that's their problem. It's not our problem. They don't seem to understand that just because Meghan Markle was a D-list cable actress and Harry was a popular member of the royal family doesn't mean that we, the British people, should be spending millions of pounds a year on their security while they're hustling like common vulgarians and really little better than pieces of trash, hawking their wares in Hollywood and elsewhere. They did entertain the possibility, though, that Harry and Meghan were just being cheap, is the word they used. I think they meant, and they meant parsimonious, because of course cheap in this country has a different meaning from the meaning they were attributing to it. And tight-fisted. I think they did make the point that Harry and Meghan were being tight-fisted, and made the point that they have plenty of money. Well, he has plenty of money. And that they also made the point that they were behind the scenes making commercial deals when they should not have been. So it was not a total panegyric, but all of these truths were buried underneath a sea of dross. Then wait for it, and I'm quoting exactly. The thing everyone took away from the Oprah interview was the way the royal family mistreated them and the royal family's racism. What racism? The royal family embraced that woman the way they had never embraced any other stranger. She was given more privileges than every other woman who ever married into, or man who ever married into the royal family, including princes such as Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark. How are they racist when she was welcomed in a way that not even a prince of Greece and Denmark, who was a descendant of Queen Victoria, was welcomed? How does that work? How is that racism? I mean, quite frankly, the viciousness with which Meghan has set up this false narrative and the way it is promulgated by her mindless followers is reprehensible to anybody who has a heart or a head or a sense of decency. They do, however, concede that it was a disservice to the royal family that Meghan and Harry did not specify who was responsible. But they did not specify that Meghan and Harry's accounts of the conversations, from him it was one conversation, from her it was many conversations, did not agree. They were dissonant. They were contradictory. That suggests they were lying, or at least one of them was lying. Propaganda. I have said it before and I'm going to say it again. Meghan Markle could teach Joseph Goebbels and Adolf Hitler a thing or two about misinformation, about propaganda, about telling the most brazen lies and expecting people to believe them, and then having people who patently had to have known that what they were saying wasn't true. Otherwise, they could not have been making some of the points they made. Yet they continue to sprout these lies and propagandize on behalf of that poisonous creature. Kay Marham says, in the Oprah interview, Markle said she wrote to Her Majesty the Queen and said, "I'm here for you. Use me as you will." Now she claims that a very influential woman begged her to continue her activism. One lie refutes the other. Again, shh. Very well observed, Kay Marham, although somebody did point out to me that maybe Meghan was trying to suggest that it's the Queen who suggested that she maintain her activism. Who knows? Maybe that will be in Meghan's memoirs. The time the Queen said to her, "Now, Meghan, darling, you know, I've so admired you ever since I first saw you being worked over by that guy in suits when, you thrust your hips into his groin." And I thought, wow, my grandson's going to have the time of his life. You've got to remain active, Meghan. You've got to keep your activism. I wonder what sort of activism springs to mind. I can think of many sorts beyond the political. Graham Linton says, Lady C, just a quick question. Do the Counsellors of State receive any form of financial retainer? No, they do not. It is something they do as a duty. It's as simple as that. They're not paid for it. They do it as a duty. P. Grace says, I cannot think of anyone more deserving than the Earl of Wessex and the Princess Royal to be Counsellors of State. Their commitment to their late mother was unwavering. They performed their duties with professionalism, compassion, and no fuss. I hope we see more of these two working royals in the future. I'm sure we will. And also Sophie Wessex as well. They are a trio of wonderful workers who do all the unglamorous stuff with no question of seeking approbation or recognition, just because they are committed to duty and public service. They understand that goodness is its own reward. Only another sort of person expects a financial reward for that which money can't buy and shouldn't sully with an exchange. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and remember, please keep the questions and comments coming in. This cannot be done without you. Thank you so much. God bless and goodbye.